Everyone, we are back for another episode of Life Possible with a Disability, and I have my friend and long-awaited guest. You would not believe how many times we have attempted to reschedule this podcast, RJ Adler, and he is with Wheelpads. And I met him I was rolling by his booth at an Abilities Expo. I don't even remember which one at this point. And stopped, and I just was fascinated by the concept and kind of the gap that it fills for accessible housing. So, RJ, welcome to the podcast. And I'm going to let you tell us a little about yourself and your company and all the good stuff.
Thanks so much, Karen. Excited to be here. Wheelpad is based in Vermont, and we build modular accessible housing. So the idea is that everyone deserves to have a home that they love, and universally accessible homes give people the choice to be able to keep their family together. And our goal, I guess you would say, is to put ourselves out of business by creating more universally accessible homes across the country. So it's an old idea that you might want to, maybe live with your parents as, they grow older. Families used to live more multi-generationally than they do now. And, or maybe you're going to unfortunately be in a traumatic accident and need your house to be accessible quickly. And what do you know? You live in a 200-year-old Vermont farmhouse, and the architect in, what was it, 1820, put some stairs in.
Look, in 2022, a multitude of people build a bunch of houses with a bunch of steps to enter the front and a bunch of steps on the inside, which are completely not necessary to the design.
So we're, we are another option when it comes to accessible housing. So, that's sort of the big broad idea is to be another option to create more accessible space. We're really excited anytime anybody anywhere builds accessible, whether that's a new build, stick built, whether that's a modular option, whether that's, renovating an internal part of your bathroom. Up until...
Well, I'm helping out the world. You'd be really proud of me because I'm leaving my very accessible house built completely accessibly in 2005 to go build another one in Tennessee. And so this hits home for me. Like, even though we planned to do this a long time ago, right now I'm in the middle of selling this house and getting ready to build, and then having to find something temporarily to live in while the accessible home is being built. And so everything you're saying to me right now is like, I actually just put a post out. It was like yesterday, basically saying, hey, like, I'm probably going to have to get a tub lift for the one place that I found that sort of works accessibility wise. Like, but what are your solutions, whether they're temporary or permanent, for finding accessible housing? Because it is an actual, real, huge problem.
Yeah. And it's a bigger problem than one company or organization is ever going to be able to fix. So, as much as we're talking about it because we're a company and we want to sell our product, we want to change the way people are building and make a product that works for everybody.
I love that. So yeah, and they're really pretty. So RJ's going to give you all the information to go look at them, but they're attractive on the outside, they're attractive on the inside, and so it's even more than accessibility, right? You want to be happy with the space you're living in.
Yeah, I think they're pretty too, but I'm biased. I think you've heard that joke before, so you really shouldn't laugh at it again. That's just encouraging.
No.
Yeah, so Wheelpad was founded...
I'm easy to entertain, RJ.
Wheelpad was founded in 2015 in response to a traumatic accident. The godson of the founders, his name's Riley Poor, he was in a swimming accident that resulted in quadriplegia, and unfortunately he had trouble finding accessible housing. And that led to his having to live in a hotel for 18 months while he initially looked for accessible housing and couldn't find it. And then eventually bought and renovated a home that suit his needs. And that's out in Portland, Oregon. He still lives there today. And his godparents, Julie and Joseph, up until Wheelpad was founded in 2015 and still today run an architecture firm. So they helped him with the design of his new house or of the renovation. And they said, gee, gosh, what if there had just been this thing that you could have rolled up and attached to your house and it would have solved all your problems? And that was, more or less how the conversation went and how Wheelpad was born. We started designing in 2015, started manufacturing in 2017, and we now have wheel pads from coast to coast, and it's grown and changing. Just a year ago, we started swinging hammers in our own production facility in Vermont. But wheel pads are built so they can be pulled behind a regular pickup truck by somebody with a regular driver's license. So it's easy for us to get anywhere across the country.
That's another huge point to it, because just shipping in general or renting anything or trying to get someone to ship something is extremely expensive right now. And at this point in your journey, if you're needing something like that, tons of extra resources are like not at your disposal.
And it's especially hard in rural places. Specifically, we build for veterans through the disability housing grants, and we are a recognized general contractor through the VA. Now, if that veteran wanted to do a stick-built addition or, an internal renovation, and they lived in rural Kansas, and the closest, recognized contractor is 2 hours away, that person is going to have a really hard time finding somebody to come in and do it. So it's, it's a really generous grant that the VA offers. And it's, something where I hope more general contractors across the country become recognized to be able to help out veterans in that way. But, modular housing in general has a really great effect on rural communities that have, a small labor force, because one contractor can install, 3 to 5 houses in the time that it would take them to stick build one house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And that's something that people don't often think of, because I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana now. I'll be outside of Memphis, Tennessee, but trying to find a contractor in any of these areas isn't that tough, right? It's not the easiest environment right now to build a house because of labor shortages and chain shortages. But that being said, you think about people who really are living in a rural area and they don't have those options at all.
Yeah. And especially depending on where you are, the rural area might be the end of the line for labor or materials. And that's certainly the case in New England, right? Because it's not as though, trucks are passing through here to get anywhere, because it is nowhere. But it's a lovely place to live. So, there's, modular housing in a lot of ways is making a comeback, and accessible modular housing is, I think, going to be a much larger part of the industry moving forward.
The whole small house movement, right? There was, that became really popular, and I always looked at them and thought, well, I could never live in one of those.
Now you can.
Now I can. Yeah. So we talked about some of and you tell me if I'm moving too fast or we're skipping part of the story, but the practical side of it, like my mom has recently moved in with me, but let's say it was flipped and she lived in an area and in a house, and it wasn't wheelchair accessible because it's an older home, and we wanted to put a wheel pad in the backyard so that we could maybe rent one space to the house. Maybe I could get into like the kitchen area, but the bath wasn't accessible for me, right? What are the practical sides of that? Who can do that and who might not be able to do that?
I mean, when it comes to like the practical sides of installing a wheel pad on your home, assuming that there's access to the home, it's not on top of a hill, it's not, surrounded by an 18-foot stone wall, that kind of thing. Anybody can do it. The town, whether or not the town or city allows this type of construction, or would allow it in their zoning code, is up to that city or the town. So,
Okay.
in smaller, more rural places, we have been given more leeway just because, zoning is a little bit more lax when there's more space. But even in, some more urban areas, it hasn't taken us that long because cities and towns are recognizing that there is a housing shortage in America, and they want to make it easier for people to construct more housing. So they're starting to allow what are called accessory dwelling units, which is a very sort of boring term for a secondary spot on the property where somebody can live, make a meal, take a shower, use the bathroom. And as people are using this next option, it's getting easier and easier to install smaller housing, because basically we still build houses in America today the way we did 60 years ago, but we don't live in houses in America today the way we did 60 years ago. And specifically what's different is that there are more people today that live by themselves or with just one other person than there were 60 years ago. But there's still about the same amount of people, percentage wise, that live with two other people or more. So part of what's created the housing crisis is that we just have more households because we have fewer people living in each household.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, my kids are all in their 20s and have all left. I mean, at one point it was me, my husband, and three kids, right? And then the kids all left, and they all are in their own places now in separate states. But my mom did recently move in with me, which it does harken back to older times when people that was the norm, right? There could be three generations living in the same household.
Yeah.
And and it's funny now because it used to be, I think, that what separated us and what separated me from my children was jobs. Their job, they physically had to be located in the state where they had employment. And that might not be the case anymore, right? So you might be able to work remotely and live with another family member and split expenses, because housing is so expensive right now too.
Yeah. Certainly the pandemic changed a lot in that way. I don't know. I don't know if I want to work remotely for the rest of my life. I do miss the office when it comes to having that connection. Wheelpad's main office is about 2.5 hours away from my house, so I only get down there about once a month, which is probably enough to be friends with everybody, but not enough to have everyone get tired of my sense of humor. So maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, I miss people too. And it's funny because now I think when I do go into our office that's in town, I spend so much time catching up with everyone and like reconnecting. I don't get an whole lot of actual work done. But when there's that balance where you are seeing them every day and you get a little piece of that human connection in addition to getting some work accomplished, I think it's a nice thing. I'm terribly missing seeing actual people.
Yeah, but I mean, from a Wheelpad perspective, at least as a company, it serves us pretty well because we have our in-house manufacturing crew that are building our houses at Wheelpad World headquarters in Wilmington, Vermont, and then our sales team is dispersed. Right now, our sales team is 2 folks. It's me, and I'm in Central Vermont, and my colleague Shay is in Rhode Island. But as we grow, it's really helpful if we can have people placed in centrally located to larger population areas, because
Mm-hmm.
it's we can look at installing a Wheelpad anywhere. We do what's called a virtual site visit for folks that are far away. They send us pictures of the house. We do some drawing on a tablet and, learn what's best for the customer. I always prefer it
Mm-hmm.
if I can actually go to the house. And we do, if we're looking at, certainly if it's in Vermont, I'll take a road trip out to the spot. If it's in, Rhode Island or the Boston metro area, Shay can head out on site, and it's so nice to make those personal connections with people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sort of the beginning of our process for folks, is to like look and do a site visit and see what the best option will be for them. And in many cases, that might not be Wheelpad, and we're okay if that's the case.
That's one thing I love about you and the whole company. It's like, it's just, you want to make the world a more accessible place to live. And you've often said, like, we might not be the solution. And y'all are okay with, like, if there's a resource closer in that person's area, and making sure they find a solution to their accessibility problem.
Well, part of it is just selfishness, right? If somebody goes and makes their house accessible, their neighbor might think, well, gee, I want to make my house accessible. And, we'll look up accessible houses online, and maybe they'll find their way to Wheelpad. But part of it is also that, again, we're trying to change mindsets, change the way the builders are building, change the way that, houses can be made accessible. Because, I for instance, just had a kid a year ago, and I didn't stand right for the first 25 years of my life, and my back doesn't work all that well. So like just 2 weeks ago, my back went out, and I wasn't able to give my daughter a bath because I didn't feel safe kind of awkwardly bending over our bathtub, which is like hard, and it is, bad if you drop your child on it.
Yes,
And
yes.
so if we had a more accessible bathtub, we bought this house. We didn't build it.
Yeah,
It would have been, I could have just like more gingerly placed my daughter right down in her bath.
yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so uh, there's certainly permanent disability, but there's temporary disability, like an injury or situational disability, like, I don't know, being a parent, where there, um, you know, it's just better and easier for everybody. So, as a company, we're
Right,
trying to serve the population that needs a wheel pad all the time, but we want houses to be accessible because it's better for everybody in
right.
general.
It kind of blows my mind, like, just in looking, and I did this back in, well, multiple times when I first got married, and actually when I first got shot, my parents had to add on to our house, and then it's kind of slope in the carport. One side is very steep, the other side isn't. So I have to approach from like a certain side to get to the lower sloped side. But 2 steps and 3 steps can easily be replaced by a very gradual slope a gradual slope that I can go to my mailbox, get my mail, rest it on my lap, and then not have to strain to like carry something on my lap and to push my manual wheelchair up that slope. It's, sometimes the solutions are just not that difficult, but it's like you said, 100 years ago, they started making steps, and that everyone just still makes steps.
Do you find that having the sort of the ramp guidelines are 12-1? Do
Mm-hmm.
you find that that's too steep?
It's a little too steep.
Okay.
I understand that you have to fit the ramp within a certain, like, sometimes, space. You only have a certain amount of length or run to create the slope. But to really be functional, like when I'm building my new house, and the reason I want to be there when they pour slab and things like that is I'm going to be very particular about how they slope the entrance from my garage to my back door, because that's how I carry in groceries. And if I have to lean too far forward to propel up the slope, I can't carry things on my lap. And before, it was not just my groceries, but my children. They sat on my lap for me to get them in and out of my home. So if it was a really steep slope, I might drop the kid trying to get in the house. Kind of a big deal.
Have you found kind of a magic number of, you know,
You
should it
know,
be 15 to 1? Should it be 20 to 1?
I should probably like figure out what kind of instrument I need to do that, because I can feel it, but I don't know what that number is. But I could find it for you for sure, because like my front slope, like I could probably have someone measure the slope of that and tell you like this is still a fairly easy slope for a manual wheelchair user to use. Um, and that's why they I looked at a couple of the Wheelpad homes that are maybe, because some of them are not attached, right? Like, are there cases where the Wheelpad is a little bit separate from the house and there's like a ramp or
So we had some folks out in Washington State install a wheel pad in their backyard. They leased it for a year, so their brother could recover from a mountain biking accident, and they have it installed freestanding in the backyard. The that's a private application, and I think the ramp they built was shorter than we would have suggested. We
right.
suggested 12 to 1. And I've only ever seen pictures of that ramp, but it looks like it's a little bit steeper. And that's going down to a deck on their property. What we tend to do is, when we connect it to a house, we like it to be level with a deck or something that, so even if it isn't physically connected to the house, the person can just
That would be ideal, right? Yeah.
raise it or lower it in the installation process. We either
Mm-hmm.
can stack it up, which is fine because nothing's above it, or we can just dig the earth out to
Right.
make it lower.
I mean, that's that, like when I envision getting in and out, obviously like flatter is better, it's just more functional. With a really flat threshold, right? Something that's easy for power chair users can also get stuck on anything that's got kind of like a mounted threshold, that kind of thing. I saw that it looks like there's a roll and shower in some of the pictures. I don't really use a roll and shower. I use more of a tub. And that might be just because that's what I learned in rehab, and I lower myself into the tub, but I can't use the new tubs that have these really thin, or actually if you go way back to really much older tubs, but anything that's got no ledge on it at all. I use the ledge to balance myself. I transfer myself from the edge of the chair, from the to the edge of the tub, and then lower myself in and push myself out, because I feel more stable that way. But is that something that would be modifiable once the person, had their wheel pad?
Yeah. So, the wheel pad itself, I guess you would call it a 3/4 bath. The bathroom is a full wet room. So once you roll in, you can you can spray down the entire thing to,
Mm-hmm.
to clean it or anything like that. If somebody wanted a tub, we could certainly spec a tub to put it in there and
Mm-hmm.
custom build and design it for that person. Or maybe they would want to put that in the connector that they built to the house. We can build maybe a larger connector and put the tub in there. So there's certainly models that work. I imagine, in a process like that, right? If somebody wanted something different from sort of what the stock model is, we were born at an
Mm-hmm.
architecture firm, right? So we have
Mm-hmm.
the ability to create those new designs. And in terms of the getting into the tub, uh, there's also in every model a hoist track on the ceiling, uh,
Oh
aid
wow,
in transitions. So, that certainly goes into the bathroom, but you can go all the way from the bed to the bath. Uh,
that's great.
I,
That's really great.
uh,
That's amazing. Yeah, because I mean, track systems, especially for my friends who are quads or you have ALS, something progressive or progressive neuromuscular disease of any type, right? And those track systems are how the person gets from the tub to the bed or out of the bed, period, right? So it's that's amazing. So is there Is there a wait list? So like, I assume only so many of these can be made at a time, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So right now, the next pad that we'll be rolling out that sort of isn't already spoken for will be coming in August of this summer.
Okay.
But we had a wait list that was so long that we said, oh my gosh, we need to start building these on our own. So up until April of last year, we worked with contract manufacturing partners that actually procured the materials and had the labor and had the facilities that could build it out. And in starting our own manufacturing, we have a whole lot more control over the process. Not only can we be more open about when we will have pads available, but also we're going to build and build and build and build and build and build and build until we have an inventory of pads so that we can install immediately or deliver immediately for a family that needs it.
That's amazing.
It's 2 weeks. By the end of this year, I will have enough of an inventory that I can say in 2 weeks I will have you a pad.
Wow. That from the time I met you, that's come a long way. Yeah. So we're kind of getting to the end of our time. So if someone is interested and they want to learn more, where do they go?
Wheelpad.com.
That's easy enough.
Or they can.
Yeah, it pops right up too when you Google Wheelpad. It's like, and photos and everything about it. So
it's all one word, Wheelpad. We spell it with a capital P and a capital W because I guess we're new agey business that way. But folks can contact me directly. My email is rj@wheelpad.com. It's again, like it can be a big project, right? So don't feel like, this is, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out. I got to, these people only want to talk to me if I want to buy their stuff. That is not the case.
Yeah. No, RJ's like the nicest person, just to let y'all know, out there in the world. So kind, really all about doing the right thing and making the world a better place. And I say that completely from my heart. And and if that means, there's another vendor and it's closer, or like, he's all about helping you try to find, an accessible place to live. So.
Thank you to New Motion for sponsoring this episode of Life Possible with a Disability. At New Motion, mobility and independence start here. For more information, go to newmotion.com. We'll see you next time.